Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Zhang. Here is a preview of some of today's top stories. Former President Trump dominates the primaries, securing the GOP nod. A dive into the Trump-Biden rematch and past presidential rematches. U.S. representatives passed a bill cracking down on TikTok. More on the bipartisan effort. Artificial food dyes are in the spotlight again in California. Lawmakers are now looking to ban certain dyes from foods served in public schools. First up, former President Trump clinched the Republican nomination for president yesterday. That sets up a rematch with the President Biden, who secured a Democratic nomination earlier in the evening. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the sequel to the 2020 election.
Former President Trump made a clean sweep of 3 more Republican presidential primaries Tuesday. He sailed through successive contests in Georgia, Mississippi, and Washington, and also won the Republican caucuses in Hawaii. Biden also won the Democratic primaries in the same states. In a campaign video on X, Biden celebrated his status as his party's presumptive nominee.
This is the time of choosing. So let us choose the truth. Let us choose America.
Trump's campaign also posted a video on X of the former president shortly after he clinched the nomination.
But this one got us over the top. The Republican National Committee has just declared us the official nominee.
Trump says now is no time to celebrate.
We'll celebrate in 8 months when the election is over. November 5th, I believe, will go down as the most important day in the history of our country.
The last presidential rematch came in 1956 when Republican President Dwight D. Eisenhower again defeated Adlai Stevenson, the Democratic opponent he had 4 years prior.
Beat him soundly both times because he was the Supreme Commander, Allied Forces Europe in World War II, and beloved by the public. I like Ike was a very famous campaign slogan.
Grover Cleveland, meanwhile, was the nation's 22nd and 24th president, winning elections in 1884 and 1892. Cleveland also successfully pulled off what Trump is now attempting. He won back the White House from the opponent who took it from him.
You can imagine if you've tasted time in the White House or come very, very close, it is a taste you never forget, a lust that never goes away.
There are other examples of presidential race rematches, but they occurred far earlier in U.S. history. Atlanta resident Cheryl Peebyhouse says she is bothered by Trump's legal cases.
And if he's convicted of a crime, then no one should vote for him.
Georgia resident Jill Waymer says she is not impressed with Biden's record on the border and says he has mismanaged the situation in Gaza.
I'm a very solidly Democratic voter, and I'm finding it very hard to imagine voting for Biden at this point.
President Biden heads to the political battleground state of Wisconsin on Wednesday after clinching the nomination. He will focus on securing the votes of suburban women, black voters, and Latinos across the Midwest. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Now let's take a look at other top headlines. Speaking of former President Donald Trump, a Fulton County judge dismissed 6 counts against him and his 18 co-defendants. Judge Scott Peterson said in an order today that the state failed to allege sufficient detail for 6 counts of solicitation of violation of oath by public officer. Georgia state law prohibits any public officer from willfully and intentionally violating the terms of his or her oath as prescribed by law. Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis alleged that Trump and 6 of his co-defendants illegally attempted to persuade state officials to violate their oaths in an effort to overturn the 2020 presidential election in Georgia, namely the alleged effort by Trump and his then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to solicit Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to decertify the election. But multiple defendants challenged that Willis have failed to detail the exact terms of the oaths that were alleged to have been violated, and the judge concurred. Trump attorney Steve Sadow praised the ruling as a correct application of the law. He said the entire prosecution of President Trump is political, constitutes election interference, and should be dismissed. The court ruling today only clears the former president for 3 charges. The rest of the GA election interference case is left intact. Trump is still facing a total of 88 charges over the 4 indictments in Georgia, New York, Florida, and Washington, D.C. The U.S. House voted to pass a bill cracking down on TikTok. The bill could see the Chinese-owned social media platform eventually banned in the U.S.
On this vote, the yeas are 352, the nays are 65. 1 present, 2/3 being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without the objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
The bill is called the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. It gives TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance roughly 5 months to divest from the app. Otherwise, it would be banned from the U.S. app stores. The bill passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. Just 15 Republicans and 50 Democrats voted against it. Those who did span the entire political spectrum, from Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Pramila Jayapal. Around 170 million Americans use TikTok. Lawmakers are supportive of the bill argue that TikTok poses a national security threat. Opponents argue the ban threatens the freedom of expression. President Biden said he will sign the bill if it makes it to his desk, but first it faces an uncertain future in the Senate. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer hasn't committed to holding a vote on it. Family Dollar announced today that it will close 600 out of its 8,000 U.S. stores in the first half of this year, and at least 370 more over the next several years as store leases expire. Parent company Dollar Tree said it will also close 30 stores as leases expire. Business analysts say that years of mismanagement and poor conditions in stores have hurt the Family Dollar's brand. This year, the struggling discount chain was hit with a record $41.5 million fine for violating product safety standards. The U.S. Justice Department said the chain was selling items that were stocked in a rat-infested warehouse. The Dollar Tree bought the Family Dollar in 2015 for $8.5 billion. The combined company hoped that by joining forces, it could fend off bigger retailers like Dollar General and Walmart. As Family Dollar struggled, rival Dollar General boomed. Dollar General has opened about 1,000 stores a year, making it the fastest-growing retailer in the United States. The company now has around 18,000 stores. A proposed new legislation in California may aim to restrict serving specific foods in public schools statewide. NTD's Christina Corona has more on the story.
Assembly Bill 2316 aims to ban California public schools from serving foods containing 6 synthetic food dyes. According to researchers, the dyes including blue 1, blue 2, green 3, red 40, yellow 5, and yellow 6 have been linked to cancer, increased activity levels, and behavioral problems in certain children. These artificial dyes can be found in various foods like ice cream, candy, flavored milks, frozen yogurt, baked goods, breakfast cereals, pudding, and more. Assembly member Jesse Gabriel, who introduced the bill on Tuesday, stated, "California has a responsibility to protect our students from chemicals that harm children and that can interfere with their ability to learn." He goes on to say, "I find it unacceptable that we allow schools to serve foods with additives that are linked to cancer, hyperactivity, and neurobehavioral harms." The bill will also prohibit foods with titanium dioxide from being served in public schools.
So titanium dioxide is a chemical. It is actually found in nature, but it can also be man-made. And it's used for basically a lot of different things, but mostly as a whitening agent.
Titanium dioxide is quite common and used in a broad range of products we use every day, from foods to sunscreens. The European Union has banned the use of titanium dioxide in its foods, but why isn't it banned in the United States?
We have not banned it in the U.S., and that's probably because there's just not a lot of good evidence. Actually, most of the evidence has been done in animals. We don't really have any good evidence that titanium dioxide is harmful to humans.
AB 2316 would need to pass the legislature and be signed by Governor Gavin Newsom before it becomes a law. Last year, Gabriel introduced AB 418, which critics dubbed as the California Skittles ban, aiming to ban products containing specific additives, despite its final version not including a ban on Skittles or titanium dioxide containing foods. The law was signed by Governor Gavin Newsom in October and will be enforced starting January 1st, 2027. Christina Corona, NTD News.
A new measure was proposed to ban fake gunfire during active shooter drills in California schools. Lawmakers say they can hurt kids' mental health.
Fake gunfire would be banned from active shooter drills in California's public schools under legislation proposed Tuesday. It would also require schools to notify students, teachers, and parents ahead of time whenever a drill was planned. Assembly Bill 1858 was introduced by Democratic Assemblymember Chris Ward, who argues that some districts have gone too far in their efforts to prepare students for possible tragedy. He says recreated shooting scenes can feel too realistic.
Now, when it comes to fire drills in our schools, we don't invent actual things on fire and put smoke in the hallways and turn up the thermostat. We should not be doing the same to our kids when it comes to active shooter drills.
Schools across the state have ramped up active shooter drills in recent years in response to the rise in shootings, but there has been little guidance about how the drills should be run. Lawmakers said without formal guidelines, some drills have been conducted with trainers acting as school shooters, students playing dead, and fake weapons being used to shoot blanks.
Currently, there are no standardized processes for school shooting drills, which is mind-boggling to me.
The new legislation would require the State Department of Education to provide standardized guidance on active shooter drills. It also would ban the use of fake gunfire, require schools to notify parents about a shooter drill before and afterward, and make a school-wide announcement before a drill begins. Schools would also have to design age-appropriate drills and make mental health resources available afterward. Just last month, KTLA reported that a principal at an elementary school outside of Los Angeles was put on leave after pretending to shoot students and announcing that they were dead during a drill. In some cases, schools also don't notify teachers, parents, and students about the shooter drills, resulting in confusion and panic. Ward said such simulations could do more harm than good.
A growing body of research has found a link between some of the active school shooter drills and, unfortunately, a dramatic increase in anxiety, depression, stress, and other mental health concerns for students following their participation, as well as some of the significant impacts to their physical health.
With school security ballooning into a multi-billion-dollar industry in recent years, some groups are pushing lawmakers to do away with shooter drills.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come back. Convicted murderer Scott Peterson appears in court virtually. He's fighting to overturn his conviction from 2004. The city of Los Angeles will host the 2028 Olympics. Find out how the city plans on preparing. Trades happening in the world of hockey will bring you a recap of recent shakeups. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Zhang. A convicted murderer for 2 decades appeared virtually in court for a status conference. A project recently took up his case to find new evidence.
51-year-old Scott Peterson appeared in court via Zoom on Tuesday, nearly 20 years after he was convicted of killing his pregnant wife, Lacey, and dumping her body into San Francisco Bay on Christmas Eve in 2002. The Los Angeles Innocence Project has taken up Peterson's case, asking a court to order new DNA tests and allow investigators to look for new evidence. Peterson was sentenced to death after a jury found him guilty of murder in the deaths of Lacey and their unborn child. The death sentence was later overturned, and he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. In January, the Los Angeles Innocence Project filed motions in San Mateo County Superior Court on his behalf. In a statement on Tuesday, the project's director said it planned to, quote, to order further discovery of evidence and allow new DNA testing to support our investigation into Mr. Peterson's claim of actual innocence. The judge set the next two hearings for April 16th and May 29th. Peterson will also attend those hearings remotely from Mule Creek State Prison.
The city of Los Angeles will be receiving millions of dollars in preparation for the 2028 Olympics. But where is it going towards? NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Los Angeles is set to receive nearly $900 million from the Biden administration for infrastructure and transit development as the City of Angels gears up for the 2028 Olympic Games. Of that sum, over $860 million is designated for the LA County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, known as LA Metro. According to Mayor Karen Bass, these funds will contribute to expanding the Metro rail system and facilitating community connectivity in preparation for the 2028 Olympics. LA Metro is set to receive approximately $710 million from both the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the 2024 budget of the United States Department of Transportation. The majority of this funding will be invested in two key projects, including the East San Fernando Valley Light Rail Transit Project, aimed at introducing light rail train service between Van Nuys and Sylmar in the San Fernando Valley. Tens of millions in federal grant funding will support the construction of sections 2 and 3 of the D-Line subway extension project. This expansion will add 9 miles of underground subway and 7 stations, connecting downtown Los Angeles to the west side. Both projects are expected to be completed before the 2028 Olympic Games. Christina Corona, NTD News, El Monte.
Did you ever wish you could guarantee an empty adjacent middle seat on a flight? Frontier Airlines unveiled the new upgrade option on Tuesday. NTD's Jason Blair reports.
For flights starting April 10th, Frontier Airlines is offering what might be the first ever empty middle seat upgrade option. It will only be available for the first 2 rows of the plane. They are calling it Upfront Plus, which they say has an introductory pricing starting at $49 a person. Frontier Airlines CEO Barry Biffle said in a statement, quote, "Many consumers strongly prefer a seating option that offers extra space when flying. The upgrade looks to be what might be Frontier's version of first-class seating. It will also include extra legroom, and buyers will be first to get in-flight service." Biffle said, quote, "Frontier is all about choice and giving consumers the flexibility to customize their travel and suit their individual needs and preferences. Upfront Plus is a great option for those who want expanded personal space and extra comfort." The airline industry had major losses in 2020 and 2021, but returned to making a profit in 2023. The IATA is projecting that number will get better in 2024 by 10%. Jason Blair, NTD News.
Lots of moves happening in the NHL during the trade deadline. Here's NTD's Tyler Castillo with more details.
Yeah, so here's the NHL trade deadline recap. Let's start with big trades that caught my attention. Tomas Hertl to Vegas, a trade nobody saw coming. Tomas Hertl was on no projections or anything, and Vegas acquires Tomas Hertl for only David Edstrom, a first-round selection, and a 2025 first-round pick. In return, San Jose sends Tomas Hertl to Vegas with a 17% salary retention and also a 2025 and 2027 third-round pick selection. Up next, we have Jake Guentzel to Carolina. Jake Guentzel is a really star-studded, solid top 6 player that any team was trying to look to acquire. And Carolina receives him and Ty Smith from the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have been disappointing this season. And in return, Pittsburgh gets a bunch of draft picks and a bunch of rookies and prospects. The draft picks do have conditions on them depending on how far Carolina makes it to the playoffs, and depending on how far they make it can change the draft pick selections. Up next, let's talk about the winners and the losers of the trade deadline. Vegas Golden Knights, absolute winners. They get Noah Hanifin. They get Tomas Hertl. When everybody's back from being injured, I truly believe they will make a deep playoff run. Up next, Carolina Hurricanes, they were able to snag Jake Wentzel away from the Vancouver Canucks, who were also interested in getting him. Up next, let's talk about the losers of the trade deadline. New York Islanders. They didn't make any trades during the trade deadline. It's the trade deadline. Teams are busy. Teams are making moves. New York Islanders just put their feet up on the table and just relaxed. Up next, New Jersey Devils. Just like the Pittsburgh Penguins, the New Jersey Devils were expected to go deep into the playoffs, but have just been disappointing so far this season. So they traded away some of their, not really star-studded, but goal-scoring pieces such as Tyler Toffoli, and in return they got very mediocre picks and very mediocre prospects and rookies. Just not something you want to see from a team that was expected to go deep into the playoffs. That's all I have for sports today. Back to you, David.
Stay tuned for China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer coming up next. And in more China news, a deadly suspected gas explosion rocks a city near Beijing, leaving a building in ruins. More on the casualties plus footage from the horrific moment. Tune in at 9:30 p.m. on NTD's China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer. And that's all we've got for you tonight. We would like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.